welcome to another sewing tutorial. My name is Ann-Sophie and I'm the person behind Sewing with Solana, and today we're gonna make the Leo dress. This is such a beautiful design. To be honest, it took me quite a while to really get the fit perfect, but like it's amazing. Like I love this dress so much. So it's like a mini dress. We have a waterfall neckline, then we have an open low back. The dress is cut on bias, and yeah, it's just one of my favorite dresses to wear. Like I think it's the perfect dress to wear during the day, but then also you can super easily dress it up. You can make it also into a maxi dress. I'm gonna film another tutorial to teach you how to turn it into a maxi dress. And for this tutorial, I'm going to be using a linen and viscose blend. You just want to make sure that you use a fabric that drapes super nicely. The dress is going to be cut on bias. We have a waterfall neckline, so just make sure that it has a nice drape to it. You can use linen and viscose blend, which I would recommend you. You can also use a satin fabric. You can also use a chiffon fabric, which I'm going to be using for the maxi dress tutorial. Like I'm going to film another YouTube tutorial and show you how to turn it into a maxi dress, which is super easy. But yeah, up to you, whatever you want to use. I'm going to be using a linen and viscose blend in this tutorial, which is my favorite fabric to make this dress in, because I feel like working with chiffon fabric is super hard, and also satin fabric can sometimes be a bit tricky, especially if you're new to sewing. And then you also need a bias tape around 55 centimeters. I'm going to show you later on in the tutorial of how to make your own bias tape, because I always find it quite hard finding bias tape that is matching your fabric and the color. So it's super easy to make your own, which we're going to do later in the video. And yeah, I don't think I have to say anymore. I'm gonna link the sewing pattern down below, and then you can purchase it, print it out at home. If you want to, you can also print it out at a copy shop in A0, which honestly I would recommend you. Like it just saves you a lot of time. It's just more expensive than just printing it out at home. But yeah, let's go and make this dress. Here we have the first page, and I would always recommend just printing the first page, and then you measure those two boxes, or it's enough if you measure one of them. So this one needs to be 5 centimeters and 5 centimeters, and this one 2 inches and 2 inches. If it measures correctly, then you can go ahead and print all the remaining pages. You can either print it out in black and white, because all different sizes have different dotted lines, but you can also print it out in color, as I have, and then all different sizes will also have different colored lines. And then we just start putting them together. I always like to put my pages in order very roughly, and then I go page by page putting them together. And now you should start with A1, and then after A1 comes A2. So you put it on top of A1, and you want to make sure that those dotted lines here on the sides line up, and then you put A2 right where the dotted line here is. And then here we have A2, next up comes A3, and we do the same again. Those dotted lines need to line up, and you put it right here where the dotted line on A2 is. And then here we have B1, and you take B1 and put it on top of A1, and you're gonna put it right where the dotted line here is. And then the dotted lines here are also gonna line up. Okay, so this is what it looks like now. We have all the A's in one row. My table was a bit too small, so the A7 is hanging down now, but so it's B, C, D, D1 to D7, C1 to C7, B1 to B7, and A1 to A7. And then, yeah, it continues here. And because I'm gonna be making a size small, I'm gonna now cut out the purple line here. And now you need to have 3 pieces cut out. You need to have the front, then the straps. The front you cut out once on bias, the straps you cut out 2 times also on bias. You could also cut it following the grain line, but I would recommend you also to cut it on bias. And then we have the back pattern piece, which you also need to cut out once also on bias. So let's talk about fabric. I'm going to be using a linen and viscose blend. This would also be the fabric I would recommend you. You should use a fabric that drapes super nicely, that is not too stiff, not too thick. You could also use a linen fabric. Just make sure that you pre-wash it, and if possible get a fabric that is stone washed before, because then linen fabric softens a bit more. You just don't want to use one of those stiff linen fabrics, because we're gonna have a little cowl neckline at the front. If you want to make the dress a bit more fancy, you can also use a satin fabric or a chiffon fabric. If you've seen my video of the Leo dress in the Leo print, I've used chiffon fabric. So yeah, just choose a fabric that drapes nicely, not too stiff, not too thick. A nice flowy linen and viscose blend, 100% viscose. You can use satin fabric, silk fabric, chiffon fabric, up to you. But if you want to follow me here, use a linen and viscose blend. So this here is the grain line, but now we want to place the sewing pattern piece on bias. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to lay the fabric on bias on my table. So now I've placed my sewing pattern on my fabric and I put it on here on bias. And I have a tip for you, because right now, as you can see, there's a lot of fabric hanging down the table, and now I'm just going to cut around the fabric generously, I don't know, I can pronounce it, generously, and this way then there won't be any fabric hanging down, which is gonna give us a much better results for having this piece cut out on bias. It's not good when there's a lot of fabric hanging off your table. You could also go down to the floor, then you wouldn't have to do this, but I prefer cutting on my table.
And as I said at the beginning of the video, we also need some bias tape. If you can buy some, like if you find some matching your fabric, that's amazing. That's going to save you some time now. Otherwise, we make our own. I was just measuring again how long it needs to be. It needs to be around 50 centimeters long. I would just recommend you to make it a few centimeters longer. So I made mine 55 centimeters long. And now it's just very important that you make sure that you cut your fabric on bias. So I made mine 55 centimeters long and 3 centimeters wide. And as you can see here, like I don't like using chalk, I still don't know how to pronounce it, because I feel like it's so, how do you say, like so unprecise. That's the word. It's not very precise. So I always just use a normal pen and yeah, use it to draw my fabric. And now you can either use this little tool here, but when I was in my sewing studio, I couldn't find it because now I found it at home in my other bag. But anyways, what you can do if you don't have that, you just fold your fabric in half, iron it, then you fold it open again, and then you iron the edges towards the center. And that's already it. So it's super easy to make your own bias tape. And yeah, especially for projects like this where you don't need a super long bias tape, this is super easy to make.
So now we're going to start sewing, and either you have made your own bias tape like I just did, or maybe you have some matching to your fabric. It also doesn't need to match 100%. I just personally think it's nicer if it's like the same fabric, same color. And now you want the good side of the back facing you. With my fabric, there's no good or bad side, but if you're working with a fabric that has a visible good and bad side, make sure the good side is facing you now. And then we take our bias tape and we open it up. And then we just pin it all the way along here. I'm gonna stop pinning here now. If you want to, you can pin it all the way. I'm just gonna fold it, like put it in place as I sew. And when we sew, I want us to sew right here where the crease line is, where the folded crease is. So we're just gonna start here, and then we go all the way around.
So what we can do now is, because this is a pretty big curve, like pretty tight curve, so you can make some small cuts. Just make sure that you don't cut into your seam, just because when we then fold it inwards, I just sometimes feel like there's going to be too much fabric built up. And to break that up a bit, you can just make some little cuts here so the fabric has a bit more space for movement. And now what we're going to do is we're going to flip it with the inside facing us. And then we just flip it like this. And now I'm going to take my pins again. And now we're gonna sew along here, just a few millimeters away from the folded edge along here. I'm just gonna cut this off now. And here's what the outside looks like, and then this is the inside. And now we take our straps, and if you have a good side, again, make sure the good side is facing you, and then you fold it in half. And now it depends a bit how wide you want your straps to be. I'm gonna sew with a 1 centimeter seam allowance away from the folded edge here. And now I'm just cutting off some extra seam allowance. This is just gonna make it easier to flip it the other way around. And I'm now using a loop turner to flip it, but if you don't have a loop turner, you can also just use a safety pin. And also the reason why I'm doing a voiceover for some parts of this video is because it was pouring rain and I have a skylight, so like a window in the ceiling. And when it's raining, it gets so loud, which is so cozy, but not the best for filming tutorials. And here are my 2 straps. I have also quickly ironed them. And now we actually need to shorten the straps a bit. They're a bit too long. I always think it's better having the sewing pattern piece a bit longer because it's super easy just cutting it shorter once it's sewn and once it's flipped the other way around. But now I'm making mine 37 centimeters long. I am 170 centimeters tall. So if you're very short, you can also make it a couple centimeters shorter. If you're very, very tall, you can also add 1 or 2 centimeters length to it. But both my straps are now 37 centimeters long. Now we take our front piece of the dress and we're gonna focus on the top part here that later we're gonna fold down. And what we're gonna do is we're just gonna overlock this, either with your overlock machine. If you don't have an overlock machine, just do a zigzag stitch, just because we want to stop it from fraying later on. And now you put the front of the dress in front of you with the good side facing you, and then you fold the top part down. And now we need to make sure that we line up the armholes perfectly and pin them together. And now we also need to pin our straps in place. So just take one strap first and put it in the very top corner right there, and then pin it in place, and then do the same to the other side. And as always, we're gonna sew with a 1 centimeter seam allowance. So I'm just gonna start at the bottom first, like not where the strap is. And then I'm gonna sew. And as we get closer to the strap, just watch what I do now, because I'm not gonna just simply sew straight over the strap, but instead I'm gonna sew at a 45-degree angle. And this is just gonna make the waterfall neckline / cowl neckline fall nicer. And now we're gonna take the strap, and you wanna make sure that it didn't get twisted. So just put your hand in there, just feel it, make sure it's not twisted. And then we're gonna put it right here in the corner. And now I'm just gonna sew the strap onto the front, like the main part of the dress, because this is gonna be the inside of the dress now, this is gonna be the outside. So you're just gonna sew across here. And then we're going to do the same with the other side. This is just going to make it a bit easier when we attach the back to it. Then we don't have to worry about the strap moving, because it's already sewn onto the front. So now we're going to put the dress in front of us again, so the front of the dress. And then we take our back piece, and now you want to make sure that the two good sides are facing each other. And now we're just going to start on one side. And now this may look a bit weird, but I've tried so many different ways, and this really gives you the best outcome. So what you want to do is now you're going to place this, you're going to make sure that this corner is not here, but it's sticking out. So it's going to be at an angle here. Then you flip the inside of the front down, and now we pin along here. So right now here we have 3 layers. We have the front, then we have the back, and then we have the front that we flip down. And now we're just going to continue pinning the side here together.
And now we're gonna sew along here, down here with a 1 centimeter seam allowance, and then after we're just gonna cut all this off. I know it looks a bit weird, but it makes more sense, like it's easier sewing on the bias tape and also cutting it out if we have this wider at the beginning and then just later cut it off. If the sewing pattern piece would be super thin from beginning on, in my opinion, it just makes it hard cutting it out neatly and also attaching the bias tape here for the back. So yeah, we're just gonna start here and then go down here. Now we're going to do exactly the same to the other side. So again, we're just going to make sure that this is hanging out here. I'm just going to flip it over now because I find it easier. Okay, so now I would recommend you to try the dress on to see how it fits, to see if maybe you need to make it a little bit smaller around your waist, or if the straps, how they fit. So just try it on, because the next step is now to overlock it. So we're just going to overlock the side seam, and then we're also going to overlock this armhole part here. And then there's only one step left to do, and that is to hem it. So let's go. So now first I'm going to overlock here, and then I'm going to overlock the side seam. So I'm going to go from here down here, and when you overlock, you're just going to put the seam allowance back together again, even though we've pressed them apart. But now we're going to sew them together again, and then you're going to do the same on the other side. We're just going to overlock first from here to here, and then we're going to overlock down to the end. And now when we hem it, I'm just going to have a relatively small hem. So you want to make sure that the inside of the dress is facing you. And then we're just going to fold it inwards, however short you want your dress to be, and then in again. And then when we start sewing, I would recommend either to start at the back of the dress or on the side somewhere here, but not at the front, because we always do a bit of front and back stitching, and it just doesn't look very nice when you do it at the front. So just pin everything in place all the way around. And then when we sew, we're just going to sew closer to this edge than this edge. So just a few millimeters away here. There's one more thing that we can do now. You don't have to do it, but it just makes it a little bit nicer at the end. So here's the armhole, and what we can do now, we can sew the seam allowance here onto the inside. So this is the outside, this is the inside, and we can sew the seam allowance onto the inside. This is just gonna make the armhole look a bit better. So we can't go all the way to the corner here, and we won't be able to sew all the way up, so it's just going to be the middle part here, and we're going to sew relatively close to the seam here. And then we do the same to the other side. And that's it for today's sewing tutorial. I am obsessed with this color. Like, I didn't expect that I would like this color so much, but when I wear it, like, I don't know, like I love it so much. I'm gonna show you what mine looks like in a few seconds. I was really hoping to get some nice clips of me wearing it at the beach for sunset or like dressing it up nicely, but the weather has been so shocking. But I'm going to Europe soon, so when I'm there, I'm gonna take lots of nice photos and videos for you to show it better to you. But yeah, thank you so much for following this tutorial. Thank you so much if you've purchased a sewing pattern. If you have any questions, please let me know. Leave them in the comments, send me an email, send me a message on Instagram. And yeah, I hope I see you at my next tutorial. Goodbye.